So what's the response of the Electoral Commission, Inec, to the allegation by the CUPP that you heard being made on the program earlier that the National Voters Register is filled with fake and foreign names? Well, Inec has commended the CUPP for expressing concerns about the register, but warned that the CUPP should not diminish the public's confidence and trust in the electoral process. The Electoral Commission also said that it had not added any new names to the National Register since the suspension of the voter registration exercise in July. It said it was conducting a comprehensive cleanup of the register by scrutinizing every record, and anyone that fails to meet all the criteria for inclusion will be invalidated. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the lawyer and former Director of Legal Services and Voter Education at the Electoral Commission, Inec, Uzzi Oluwole. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You heard Mr. Ugochinyere earlier, spokesperson of the CUPP, making his allegations. What do you make of what he said?
Well, I did watch the earlier broadcast by him, and of course it calls for some concern. I also heard what he said in the studio. It calls for some concern. But putting things in perspective, chronologically, you recall that Inec had said that it is cleaning up the register long before the CUPP made that statement, long before that time, at least a week or two before that time. It even gave statistics. It released a press statement saying that, look, we have weeded out 1.2
I remember seeing that statement,
million people out of 2.5, almost 47% of the total number of people who came in for the CVR. So that process has been on even before this was done, and it's ongoing. It hasn't been concluded. And it might be misleading when you listen to him to think that the CVR, all those people who registered have been, in fact, using his phrase, if I recall correctly, more than 10 million fake names have been injected into the system. That is subverting the thing. That's not correct. That's not at all correct. Altogether, even with CVR, not up to 10 million people came out for CVR. So, except to say everybody who came to do CVR is fake.
That's continuous voter registration. For those who don't know.
For those who don't know, continuous voter registration. So we don't have that number of people totally who came out. So that's not correct. And secondly, not one single name has been added to the register. The process is that once you do registration for a year, earlier on in the next year, you display all those who have come forward. You display it so that people see that, look, and you give it to the political parties, actually. And under Section 19, before the election, 90 days before the election, you must have a specific period, at least 7 days, for claims and objections. Claims and objections that, look, this person is not in the register, is not a Nigerian, is not qualified to be on the register. What is his name, or what is her name doing there? This is wrong. Or that my name or somebody I know who registered, his name or her name is not on that register. So it's claims, making claims, and making objections. You object to all sorts of people who ought not to be on the register. So CPP and other people have come forward and said, look, there are some of these people who ought not to be in the register. Of course, then we'll have to investigate. I can't say that Oluwole O shouldn't be on the register and automatically I just yank him off. No, of course not. We won't do that. Otherwise, you'll be yanking off people who otherwise ought to be on the register. So that is it basically, not one single, until you do that cleanup, until you do claims and objections, then you're not going to certify the register that we use for the
right. Nevertheless, Inec itself, as you said, even before the CUPP came up with its allegations, has said that, you know, it is in the process of cleaning it up, and it is discovering that things that were there are not supposed to be there. And then subsequently, CUPP made its allegations. The question that people want to know is, how is it possible for the voter registration process to be compromised?
Okay, good. There's some who do out of ignorance, there's some who do it deliberately. A lot of people, unfortunately, who were supposed to do transfers, rather than do a transfer, they went and re-registered. Rather than do a change of address or whatever changes that I went to do mine because my photograph did not appear so clearly on my voter's card. But I was not allowed to re-register afresh, like somebody who has not registered before. If you do that, that's multiple registration. That means you probably have two cards, or your name is registered twice, maybe in two different locations. That is criminal. And I've watched Lagos. We were in Lagos last week. We watched presentations by the commission, and several, the ICT director has shown us the register. I said, look, there are certain people who change their clothes, change their appearances, tied hair tie or wore glasses or things, who try to beat the system. But through AFIS, it used to be AFIS, that's when fingerprint identification, now it's ABIS, you know, through the biomodel, both fingerprints and facial recognition, those people are going to be weeded out. So yes, it's possible. And then again,
and we can be confident that that is going to happen.
It is happening.
Because part of the problem in the past has always been that there have been a lot of allegations of people, even within the Electoral Commission, who are not as straightforward as the society would like them to be, and without making any allegations against anyone.
No, it's not unusual where you recruit so many thousands of people to undertake an exercise for you. It's not unusual to have some bad elements there, bad eggs will be there. That is for sure. It would be wrong for me to go and say,
so do you expect that some of these spurious appearances on the voter register will slip through the net?
I don't expect that they would.
But it is possible, isn't it?
Of course it is possible.
Right.
Because there are some that might be cleverly done, or the different sieves and checks may not be able to detect all. ABIS is not 100% accurate. I think it's 99 point something. But so obviously out of 1,000 there might be 100 who will pass through ABIS. Because it's a human system, it will have human feelings. So it's not 100% accurate. In the same way, but that's why Inec is not relying only or solely on technology. Physically, it's required to also go through the register, one after the other, see whether these are photographs of real people, whether they are passport photographs, whether they are photographs taken from almanacs and calendars, as was done sometime in the past. There are several ways in which it's going to try to sieve through, and hopefully, the vast majority of entries that are not there will be removed. I believe so. Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait for that final, the release of the final document, and be able to ascertain whether or not there are still sort of anomalies in there. But what about the claims that INEC denied more than 7 million Nigerians the opportunity to complete their online pre-registration during that voter registration period? Because out of more than 10 million Nigerians who did their pre-registration online, only just under 3.5 million completed the process.
Yes, you see, unlike some other countries, I think Australia is one that readily comes to mind. Voter registration is not mandatory, it's not compulsory. So if a person chooses not to register, there isn't much else you can do to that person. It's not mandatory. Now, for the first time, and there are very few countries that do that, so the first time in Nigeria, you could do pre-registration. And that is upload your details and everything else, but to capture your biometrics, you have to go physically to the station. For whatever reason, and maybe that should be subject to that discourse, or we should carry out, undertake some kind of exercise to find out why these people did not. I cannot hazard a guess why so many people who undertook that pre-registration did not go to complete that exercise. Maybe they're testing the system. I wouldn't know. I don't want to.
Yeah, but the INEC has been taken to court for failing to give those 7 million Nigerians adequate time, opportunity, and so on to complete their voter registration after they had carried out their registration online. At least that's the claim.
That's the claim
in the lawsuit.
So we cannot say much about the merits or demerits of that claim because it's a case in court.
Yeah, of course.
But don't forget that this exercise started last year. And this pre-registration started last year, which is, in my own estimation, more than enough time for people who were interested in getting registered. You go there, you book, and for a long time, there was no rush. But when the exercise was to close, then there was a groundswell, and that was even extended. But apparently, some people did not take advantage of that. They did the pre-registration, but for whatever reason, as I said, they chose not to complete that exercise. But more than enough time was given.
So do you think then that all this is really about Nigerians failing to keep to deadlines, part of that culture of not doing things when you're within a certain time frame, and when they're unable to do so, they start to agitate for extensions, basically?
Well, that seems to be the reality of what we face. Very often, regardless of whatever exercise, once deadlines are set, we tend to clamor for extensions because things are not done. Now, for example, some voters' cards are ready to be picked up. You will be people, the staff there are idle. Not enough people are coming around to come and pick the cards. It's 2, 3 people when there are hundreds of cards lying there. But I'm sure by the time Inec might set a deadline for picking up voters' cards, and there might just be that deluge, that surge. That surge might be there. So yes, that may have a thing to do with it, but also some people just did not feel up to completing the exercise for whatever reason. So apart from that deadline issue, but I think some of them just did not. For whatever reason, I can't fathom it.
Right. Just again, for those of the public who may not know,
yes.
What is the law with regard to INEC displaying voter registration to the public for verification?
Great. According to Section 19 of the Electoral Act 2022, INEC will set a period of 7 days to display this register. Unfortunately, my experience in the past is that people don't take advantage of that. But I hope with this kind of publicity coming in now, people will take it seriously. Just go and ascertain. Don't wait till election day to go and see whether your name is on the register. Don't wait till election day to say, look, your gender you have been mislabeled gender-wise, or your address is wrong, or your age is wrong. Very often, not very often, but sometimes.
I mean, those are mistakes that can happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is the opportunity to check that before the final register is issued and before your PVC is printed, so that if this can be corrected easily. Also, we know ourselves in most communities, and if you feel that there are certain people who are not known in that community, but you don't have to belong to that community to be registered anyway. But in case there's doubts raised, then maybe this thing can be looked at. That is one thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And your overall sense, we've got about a minute or so left, of how this whole registration process has gone and how INEC seems to be getting ready for this massive election in 2023.
I think by and large it has gone well. There's increased consciousness about the need for registration. I think ever since 2020, ever since NSAS, especially amongst the young people, they've seen the need and the power in the PVC. They've seen that votes count and will be counted. And I think the surge has been partly due to the enthusiasm displayed by a lot of younger Nigerians who for the first time are coming to vote, and maybe for the first time actually believe that their votes will make a difference. So there's that groundswell, which is very, very good. And by and large, I think it's been a fair process, and I hope that we can run with this towards the election and get a good, credible election.
I want to thank you very much indeed, always, for your analysis as well as for your insights. Osaze Uzzi Oluwole is a lawyer and former Director of Legal Services and Voter Education at the Electoral Commission, INEC. Thank you very much indeed.